It's the Blue Collar Breakdown! Welcome to the Blue Collar Breakdown! Starting right now!
Hello, welcome to Blue Collar Breakdown. This is Tom Eddlem, the Blue Collar Economist. And this is episode number 10. And I've got my first interview coming up in just a minute. I've got Deborah O'Brien, an attorney who's going to talk to us about the Karen Reed and Sandra Birchmore cases in Massachusetts. And you should be interested, even if you're not from Massachusetts. We'll go into why. Some of these cases, they really make a big difference. I'm going to give you a personal example. But before I do, one housekeeping thing. I've got an article coming up at the Libertarian Institute, probably getting published tomorrow, but if not, next week sometime, about the Federal Reserve Bank and how it slowed American growth. I've got some nice charts in there, so keep an eye out for that at the Libertarian Institute, and I'll probably do a podcast about that at some point in the future too. But if you want to know the real deal before then, go to the Libertarian Institute and check them out every morning. They've got some great stuff. Okay, so we've got this case in Massachusetts. Actually, there's two cases we're going to talk about. Why do you care? If you're listening from Minnesota, if you're listening from England or from Texas, why do you care about Massachusetts cases? Well, there's a similarity in the way police are being corrupted across the country and really even across the world. But also, I've learned things from local cases. All right, I had a friend, William Norman Grigg, smartest guy I ever knew. He died in 2017. He was a great writer, and he helped bring me into libertarianism from being a right-winger. And he was always talking about these local police corruption cases, and that was his. He was like a dog with a bone on that. And there was one case in particular. Now, keep in mind, I'm a right winger. I was for the death penalty. I'd written one of the most circulated thing I'd ever written was in favor of the death penalty, 10 fallacies of the death penalty, and it was pro death penalty. And Will Grigg, in the last year of his life, in 2016 and 2017, all he wrote about was this guy, Christopher Tapp, T-A-P-P. He was a guy in Idaho who Will had said he's innocent. And I looked into the case a little bit and found the guy pled guilty to murdering and raping a 19-year-old girl. He pled guilty. How could he be guilty? How could he not be guilty? He pled guilty. He admitted it. So my friend Will Grigg dies. And I'm still thinking that same thing. He dies in 2017. 2018, they release Christopher Tapp. 2019, they find the real guy and convict him on DNA evidence. So it makes me wonder, well, why would he plead guilty to murder? A murder he did not commit. And the answer was pretty simple. The prosecutor said, you will plead guilty to murder or we will kill you. We're going for the death penalty if you don't plead guilty to this murder. And of course, he didn't commit it, but he thought, well, 30 years is better than dying, so I guess I'll plead guilty. And he ended up serving 20 years in prison for a murder he didn't commit. And it changed my opinion of the death penalty, because even if all of the people who were killed by the death penalty were guilty of murder, and in my opinion, they would deserve to die, this kind of prosecutorial abuse of using that as the stick to get people to plead guilty to crimes they didn't commit, I from that point on, I opposed the death penalty. So some of these local cases, I mean, this was a local Idaho case, and I'm in Massachusetts. What do I care about Idaho? They can have an impact on your thinking, and they can have an impact on the whole idea of what the role of police is in our society and what it ought to be. And that's why I want to do something about this Karen Reed case, and also another lesser known case, a young woman named Sandra Birchmore. Karen Reed, well, let me bring my guest in. My guest is Deborah O'Brien, an attorney who also happens to be my sister. And she's followed the Karen Reed case assiduously. Let me just give it. You can correct me, Deb, if I get anything wrong. But the Karen Reed case is national news. It was covered on Dateline. It was covered by Vanity Fair. It's been covered by a number of national outlets because of the apparent stink of corruption. But before we assume there's corruption, let's look at some of the evidence first, okay?
Okay.
Because a lot of our viewers are like, well, either, hey, all I know is what I saw on TV and that wasn't much, or maybe they didn't see anything. So what? Oh, and I before we go on, I should also note that this is not just a local Boston thing. This has direct connections to me on both sides, or maybe more indirect on one side. Karen Reed graduated from the high school I used to teach at. I didn't. She wasn't a student when I was teaching there, but she did graduate from the school I was teaching at. So many of the people that she knows, I know. And on the other side, many of the witnesses are childhood friends of mine. Again, people I haven't seen in 40 years, but nonetheless, I have connections to both sides of this case. So I have inherent biases. But the basic case is this. Back in 2021? Was it 2021? How long ago? No, was this
2022?
Okay, it was 2022. Middle of a snowstorm. Karen Reed and her boyfriend, who is a Boston police officer, John O'Keefe, he's a desk jockey. He runs the sex registry for the Boston police, or at least he works at that desk. And they go out for a night of drinking, then they go over to a friend's house, and he goes in, she does not, or at least he leaves the car, she does not. So what the police say is she ran him over and it was an attempted murder. And what the defense says is, no, he went in the house and he was killed there and then brought back out and she was framed. Okay, so that's the summary of the event. But there's a lot to it.
So much.
You know, it's funny.
Much.
We were talking before the podcast, and you're saying how long do you want to go? And we could go
on and on. It's an onion.
So let's just start with a couple of basic facts.
I have to go slow.
Okay, there's a lot of names here, and most of the people don't have to know them. But let's start with this guy, Michael Proctor, because he's kind of a central figure in this case. And he is a Canton police officer? What is his role?
He's the Massachusetts State Police Officer that was the lead investigator of the case. And
so he's kind of an important figure. What's
his
he doing
office
for a living now?
He
was
nobody
fired,
knows.
wasn't he?
He was fired. Whether or not he's doing surveillance or like collecting garbage, I honestly don't know. No offense. Like, I honestly don't know.
Why was he fired? Why was he fired?
He was actually not fired. He was not fired for planting evidence. He was, which he is alleged to have done by many. He was fired for the inappropriate text messages that he made during the investigation. So during his investigation, his cell phone text messages, his personal text messages came to light. And during that, he called Karen Reed the C word. He showed, inherent extreme bias. He, he exploited her disability, degraded her, dehumanizes her. I mean, it was really bad.
Okay.
So that is why he was basically fired for those text messages and not for handling the evidence. And they tried to say that it was just that it did not, that his personal bias did not affect the case.
Okay. Well, let's take the prosecution's. Let's assume they're right for that. We can move on from there. All right. So, according to the prosecutors, Karen Reed, she and her boyfriend were fighting that night, and that appears to be, if you listen to the voicemails and the text, and you read the texts, which are now public domain, that they were obviously arguing.
Nope. No.
So
those text messages were text messages and voicemails after the fact. After he no longer came back out of the house, and she misunderstood what was happening. So the surveillance video, and by all accounts and testimony, they were actually, it's a quote from the trial, lovey-dovey. And they went on to say how, he put her arm around her, he kissed her on the forehead. They were very, very affectionate. They showed zero signs of arguing by anybody's testimony. It was only when, he went into the home, Karen said that when she saw that he didn't come back out, that she became very, frustrated and angry, probably relating it back in her mind to a previous argument that they had in Aruba, and thought that he was, because he was very drunk. He was like 3 times the legal limit, I believe. So yeah, he was very drunk too. So she probably was just pissed that her boyfriend was so drunk and forgot about her.
Sure.
And she had to use the bathroom.
Okay. So, that's important. That's true. She did have an intestinal disease. So, or condition. The prosecution says, what she does is she lets him out. She backs over him, kills him with her car, and he hits his head. Now it's snowing out, so I don't know. I mean, there's maybe there's only, it's a big snowstorm, but it's just gotten started, so maybe there's only a few inches on the ground. Maybe he doesn't hit his, but you could still hit your head, I guess, theoretically, pretty hard if your car's going backwards. And she leaves him for dead. This is the prosecution story. That would cause a lot of damage to a car, and the prosecution says, hey, we got all these pieces of her taillight. That shows that, and they're found at the scene. That's not that's evidence, isn't it? Or is there a problem with that evidence? You know what I'm getting at.
I know what you're getting at. Yeah. There's a problem with every piece of evidence, if you take it one by one. So the problem
let's talk about the taillight pieces.
Yeah. The taillight pieces. Number one is when the investigators get there. Canton Police swept that area with a leaf blower.
Okay, they did that as soon as they got there, and they found all these pieces of.
They found
taillight,
zero
right?
pieces. Nope, 0 pieces.
They found 0 pieces. Okay, then how did they get the pieces that from the taillight? Because there were eventually taillight pieces discovered, correct?
Yes, correct. But the taillight pieces were never found by the Canton Police Department, even though they swept the area good with a leaf blower, and that was all documented on camera, on video.
Okay.
The taillight pieces were not found until much, much later in the day, the end of the day, after the Massachusetts State Police have retrieved Karen's vehicle from North Dighton and had it towed back to Canton Police Department, allowing just enough time for those pieces to be planted. It's worth noting that Trooper Proctor made a mistake on the time he towed the car, which would have been misleading. It would have suggested that it would have been impossible to plant the taillight, but as it turns out, that was disregarded.
But there was enough time, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
That was discredited.
So what the defense says is, gee, what they did was they towed it to the lot down in Dighton, smashed the taillight, brought the pieces to the scene. That's the defense's view. The prosecutor says, oh no, hey, we got video evidence. Look, the taillight smashed. Or do they? Do they have video evidence from the impound lot or from the Canton police?
No. Well, no, what's noteworthy about that is all the absence of evidence. So there's a lot of missing video, missing camera footage. And when was played, what they did have was played in court. You could see these apparitions of people just like popping in and out of the frames like ghosts, clearly manipulated. So yeah, there's a lot of missing data from the Canton police surveillance. I think there's like 45 minutes that's missing, and that's just happens to be the same time that Karen Reed's vehicle was in the Sallyport.
Wow, it's almost like the Epstein video, prison video, just happened to miss the 2 minutes when he was hanging himself. Wow, okay. Let's go on to the next thing. We've got the pieces of the thing, but hey, it should be pretty obvious. Like when you get hit by a car, I mean, it creates these, this a trauma in your body, right? I mean, like you get hit. I mean, I've never been hit by a car, but I've been hit by heavy things, and I get all these bruises, and it, a lot of times it looks like the thing that hit me. But I have an image here to show of John O'Keefe's arm. Now, keep in mind, he died from head trauma. Okay, so picture this is a snowstorm, and the prosecution is saying, well, what happened was she let him out, gunned the car in reverse, hit him. He fell back and hit his head. And these are the images. This is the image of his arm. So I guess this is his right arm.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be an image. This is supposed to be from an automobile injury.
I don't know.
I mean, I guess you could get a couple of scratches from getting hit by a car. Especially if things break and things puncture. But automobiles tend to have, I don't know how to put it, they're symmetrical. The tail light has a symmetrical housing typically. I mean, she was driving a Lexus. This doesn't really look like it. And what did the defense say that this was? These injuries?
A dog attack, dog bite, dog scratches. And they found a dog expert, Dr. Marie Russell. She was outstanding, highly credentialed, an ER doctor, former police officer, ER doctor, who happens to specialize in canine bites. And so she explained the parallel lines and the punctures, and it was 100% certain that this was from a canine.
Did Karen Reed have a dog in her car? I mean, how does a dog bite get in on his hand, or what?
Well, the theory, like not the theory, but when John went in the house, Chloe is the dog that's alleged to have attacked that arm, and that certainly looks like it, doesn't it?
The homeowner owns a German Shepherd who was known in the neighborhood for being aggressive.
Yep.
I mean, there are a number of reports from neighbors that their dog, this dog Chloe, this German Shepherd, had attacked other neighborhood dogs. I don't know about
Where's-
people, but I mean, it's plausible that this was a dog attack. Now the defense says, okay, I've talked about what the prosecution says. The defense says, hey, here's what happened. Karen Reed got out of the car, let John go into the house. They weren't really super happy with each other, so he wanted to go in to see if they were going to be friendly, because they'd been out drinking, and people tend to get stupid when they drink a lot. Some people like to fight. Others, like me, I remember I haven't been drunk much, but when I was in college, I was just afraid to get in a fight because I knew I couldn't fight. But some people get very aggressive. So we wanted to go in and see whether they would be receptive to, some more drinking and more partying after visiting the bars. And he never came back. So Karen Reed thought, as you had said earlier, he'd abandoned her. And so she went home.
Yeah, and waited for him.
Right. And so the defense says, okay, here's what likely happened. There was some sort of violence in there. The dog bit the hand, and somehow, most likely, John O'Keefe died, probably accidentally. And they figured they'd pin it on the girl who had just gone home. That's the defense's view. I've watched a substantial amount of the coverage of it, and I think that's probably more likely what is going to happen, what did happen, than the prosecution's view that Karen Reed got run over. And for me, the arm is one thing, but there's a lot of irregularities in the case, and there have been a number of police officers disciplined over poor procedures, let's put it that way, on this case. But the interesting thing, to me, is at the time, when John O'Keefe is supposedly, here's the thing, there's 10 people in the house, I think, roughly 10 people. There's John O'Keefe, and then there's this ATF agent, Brian Higgins, and a Boston cop, Brian Albert, and a Canton cop, Kevin Albert.
Kevin Albert wasn't in the house at the time.
Okay, he wasn't in the house. Okay, good to know. Nicole Albert was Brian Albert's wife. Jen McCabe, who was Nicole Albert's sister, and another couple that weren't. I don't think they were police officers. So there was a substantial. There were quite a few people there.
Well, so, what it was is the adults were out at the bar. The kids were home drinking because it was Brian Albert Jr.'s 22nd birthday? I don't think it was the 21st. And so he had friends over, and they were other witnesses in the first trial, Sarah Levinson and Julie Nagel. Like, basically the son and his friends were drinking at the house as well. And so then the parents, the older crew, came back home for the after hours to join Brian Albert Jr. for his birthday cake or something.
Okay, so this, here's the thing. It's difficult to make a case either way because there's a lot of people in the house. Now, if the defense wants to say, hey, John O'Keefe was killed in the house and they all covered it up. However, on the other hand, if you take the prosecution side, there's a whole bunch of people in the house, and most of them go home to other places, and none of them see John O'Keefe. Now,
so they say.
Yeah, that's
they all have personal bias, inherently, if that were the case, so.
All these people walking out the driveway, they don't see a body. He could have been covered in a little bit of snow, but they weren't, according to the story, they weren't there that long that he would be covered in mountains of snow So
Well, remember not to interject for a second, but Lucky Loughran, he was the man that plowed the street that night, and he did several routes through the neighborhood. Couple times he drove by the street, and actually I have to check my times here, but basically he drove by around 2:30, and there was no body. And then there was, and he was very specific that this particular plow that he drove had super lights, very bright, very high visibility, and for these things. And he always was very meticulous to watch out for animals. And basically, he did not see a body when he drove by the first time. When he drove by the second time, not only did he not see a body, or John's body, but he saw a vehicle. Oh my goodness, I hate him. That Brian Albert and Colin Albert both drove. So there was a vehicle parked right there at that spot where.
Yeah, that's annoying to a plow driver to see a car on the road during a snowstorm.
No, but that vehicle but that's very significant because that vehicle was not there. There's no explanation for why that vehicle would be parked there other than to block the
view from,
and
because there was
bad business.
Well, because there was also I happen to know that there was a surveillance camera across the street that was pointed in that direction. So it would have shown had there not been a car in the way if there had been a body there. But I just find that, it's interesting because if none of the guys going up the driveway would see it, I wouldn't expect a plow driver to see it, even with bright lights, because if it's snowing out, I wouldn't expect it. But
they have to plow the edges, and make sure the sides of the road are very clear. And some of
John
those
was at the end. He was found at the edge of the road, is what you're saying.
Yeah, 8 feet from.
Okay.
They didn't actually mark it or delineate it, but because they did Keystone Cop investigation. But he was found very close to the side of the road by the fire hydrant.
Okay. All right. So there's what this comes down to is there's a lot of people involved in this if the defense is right. And I came to the conclusion that the evidence, there's just, I want to move on to the Sandra Birchmore case, but can you just summarize briefly in a sentence or two, we went over the irregularities about the taillight. Some of the other irregularities. Oh, and the camera footage at no, did we do camera? Well, we'll just summarize several other of the irregularities of the police reporting on this.
Oh, okay. So we briefly touched on the taillight. The key cycle is a less interesting thing. I should probably save that for last, but that's the technical stuff with the car vehicle. And I know a lot of people tune out the digital stuff, but this is actually pretty simple. When you actually go to look at it, all you need to know is how to count backwards. So if Trooper Paul did his testing, a key cycle is just a counter, and so
when it's on this, what you're talking about is Karen Reed's Lexus.
Vehicle.
Okay.
It just counts, there's a number that counts the number of times a vehicle starts. And from the time you first get the car, first time you started, 1, 2, 100, 200, and on and on and on. So all you need to know about the key cycle is that they're saying that with the digital data, the moment you put the car in reverse and hit that pedal, that was during key cycle 1162. And they're saying that they tested the car, shortly after 1164. And that is technically impossible simply because we know how many times she's driven the car. If you count backwards.
Okay.
Am I making this too confusing? It's not confusing. It just needs it a couple of times.
let me try to summarize it then. What you're saying is her car has a register for every time she turns the engine on or puts it in reverse or whatever, it there's a counter there and it says, hey, something happened. And it's a digital footprint. And what you're saying is they say she hit him at 1162 when she was backing up.
Mm-hmm.
And what the police officer is saying is it was delivered to the police station at 1164 the next day.
Well, he's saying that he did, that he did his testing at 1164.
He did his testing.
But
yeah, okay, because Karen Reed didn't just back out of the driveway. She drove home, then she drove back. She drove around quite
several
a bit
times, several trips
before they took over. So there would have been many more keystrokes, is what you're saying. So
simple math counting backwards. You can't just have two key cycles of the difference. So, but that's just makes it that it can't be a mistake. I don't, it's just impossible that 1162 was Karen Reed. And what's interesting is after 1162, they already had possession of our vehicle. And what's interesting is after they took possession of the vehicle, there's an additional 36 miles added to our odometer. And what I find really interesting is why would there be 36 miles added to her odometer if they just towed it over 30 miles in a nor'easter? Think about that. This is such an underrated point.
Did
I know
digital
stuff's for.
Yeah.
Did they go for a joyride and then a nor'easter? It makes zero sense. Like, of course, that can't be. So the only thing I can think of is that they sort of Ferris Buellered it, and if you play around with it, because if they're trying to frame Karen, which you know how I feel about this, they would need the digital data to match the storyline. They would need it to match the damage on her vehicle.
Yeah.
So they would need a triggering event that shows her flooring it in reverse. And that is all they need to do that is to start the car. You have it on some sort of something and you slam it and it could, And, but if they did that, one more thing on this and then we'll move on. But if they did that, they would need to add the 36 miles to the odometer in order for it to be believable. So for me, that's evidence of intent.
Okay.
Not a misunderstanding.
The Karen Reed case, in my opinion, like I watched, I want to say 4 or 5 hours of video last year, and I felt like I didn't have a handle on the case. I thought it was very complex. There's a lot of details. And if you look at the details, you say, that makes no sense. Either the cops are covering something up or they are the most incompetent people. But there were a lot of things there in the minutia that are worth looking into. If you want to get a handle on how bad things are with the Canton police in that respect. But I want to move on to this other case because this one is, in my opinion, it's much clearer. There's a real bad case of corruption. And it's not just, now keep in mind, all right, Canton, Massachusetts is, we both grew up in Norwood, Massachusetts. It's 2 towns south of Boston and it abuts Canton. All right. And it's not as expensive as Boston. So it's sort of a bedroom community for a lot of people who go into Boston, but it's still pretty pricey. Like a 4-bedroom colonial with a 1/4 acre land is still close to $1 million. So it's still pricey. Boston area is very expensive. And these are towny towns. These are places where people they all know each other. Like, we both Deborah and I, we both know, if we don't know all the people involved, we know people who know the people type of thing. That's the kind of case where this is. Stoughton is one town further south of Canton. And there was a case called well, there's actually, is it even a case? I guess it's a case now. It's a federal case. But there was a young girl, but 6 or 7 years ago, Sandra Birchmore, and she joined the Young Explorers program at Stoughton Middle School with the run by the Stoughton Police. And the Stoughton Police have, like most police officers in Massachusetts, they have I don't know what I forget what the term is. They have a police officer who works in the school and befriends the kids and stuff and teaches them that the cops aren't so bad. But here's the thing, just like pedophiles are attracted to positions, well, they're attracted to positions that give them access to kids. That's why you have the Catholic Church priest scandal that broke 20 years ago and 25 years ago, and it's still breaking on occasion. You have the Boy Scout scandal. You have teachers constantly being arrested. The same thing goes for the cops. It's not that priests or teachers or Boy Scout leaders or cops are inherently pedophiles, but pedophiles seek out those opportunities to be the kids. And in one case, at Stoughton High, there was a guy named Matthew Farwell who was a police officer, who is the thing, and he ended up having a sexual relationship with this Sandra Birchmore. At least that's what the court documents say. That's what all the police say. I'm sure he denies it, but it looks like there were, according to the report, there were 32,709 texts between the two of them. Now, as a teacher, former teacher myself, I know you don't text students. You just don't. I mean, that was explicit training when I was in teaching 15 years ago. I started in 2007, so that was even more than that. That was, you don't text students. You can, if you communicate with them, it's through email. You do it through your official school email. You don't do it personally. You never text a student. That was just for, but there's 32,709 texts between these two. Many of them after he was let go from the police department. But many. The point is, he and two other police officers, maybe three other police officers, were dismissed from the Stoughton Police Department after a long internal affairs investigation, and the Norfolk District Attorney, which prosecuted Karen Reed twice, including a chance at double jeopardy, because the original jury came back and said, we find her not guilty of attempted murder, but they tried her again for murder. But anyway, the Norfolk District Attorney said, I don't see any evidence to prosecute this guy Farley, even though we have all these text messages and we have a student here who I know maybe she didn't want to testify, but I don't even know if they bothered to approach her. I'm monologuing here, and I know you're very passionate about this, Deb, as I am, because I think it's just horrendous that nothing was done by the state of Massachusetts with a cop who was at the very least inappropriate with a student. And according to some of the texts, if you believe the texts, he took her virginity when he was still 15. So it would be statutory rape.
Absolutely. I mean, they have all that evidence now that they have it thanks to the FBI, because the Massachusetts State Police didn't find anything on Matthew Farwell. And that's impossible to believe, because there's so much evidence. Like I've never seen anything like it. There's a Norwood connection. There's a Norwood connection to the Massachusetts State Police not finding anything, isn't there? Oh, Nicholas Carino?
Yeah.
Trooper Nicholas Carino.
Okay, you guys listening out in the hinterlands, you don't know this, but in Norwood, Massachusetts, there is this bakery that's been around for decades, maybe millennia. I don't know. Guarino's Bakery, and one of our family favorite birthday cakes is the rum cake. And the funny thing is, you and I don't even care for it that much, but everybody else.
I'm so sick of it.
is like, oh, it's the Guarino's rum cake. It's not like it's really good, but he is of that family. And
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about rum cakes. So he doesn't find any texts between the two of them. He gets, because he gets the Massachusetts State Police. Farwell is dismissed from the Stoughton Police Department, and Guarino takes possession of his cell phone.
Yeah,
and can't find any texts between him and Sandra Birchmore.
It's so outrageous to me. He is the Massachusetts State Police officer in charge of forensically searching phones in homicide cases. And here he is missing the most bombshell information in not one, but 2 murder cases in the same town a year apart. I don't understand it. Is he still searching? Is he still responsible for searching phones in homicide cases? Because that's very disturbing.
Okay, when you say not one, not 2. Now you're getting ahead of us with Sandra Birchmore, because she does end up being, she does end up dying. They rule it a suicide. We're going to get into it why it very likely is not a suicide. But when you say 2 murder cases, what are you talking about? What's the other murder case?
Well, he was involved as searching the phones in both the Sandra Birchmore case and the Karen Reed case. So he searched Jen McCabe's phone, for example, and did not find any of the deleted calls, did not find any of, or did not find the Google search, notoriously How Long to Die in Cold. It was the FBI that found all this information in both cases. They found all that information, How Long to Die in Cold, and they presented it to the defense. And they said, they actually, not to bounce around too much, but they had a meeting, supposedly with the both sides, defense and prosecution, with Josh Levy. I believe this was just a phone conference, and he said, I cannot in good conscience let this, prosecution continue. I have this information I need to provide. And at that point, they sent over 3,000 pages of information, and that the information from the phones was some of that information that they got. So prior to that, they had no idea about the Google search or the deleted calls on the phones, because Nicholas Guarino search did not turn up anything about that.
I'm going to date myself. Nicholas Guarino was just like Sergeant Schultz in Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing. Sorry.
It makes, in hindsight, it makes so much sense why he had a hot mic moment in the first trial where he literally had a hot mic. He's like, killed me under his breath on the stand. A trooper who's probably testified many times before. And But with the Sandra Birchmore case, he didn't find any text messages. He had her cell phone. He had their laptop. He had, and Farwell's phone as well. Yeah.
Okay. So the Stoughton police fire 3 policemen, and as it turns out, the animal control officer.
Yeah.
One of them just gets transferred to another police department, to the Abington police. I forget which one it was. I think he was unnamed. So it may have actually been a 4th police officer.
I believe that. I thought Abington was Joshua Healy, which was the animal.
That could be. Okay. Well, the news story I read said unnamed, so that could be. But the it may have come out later because I read an earlier story. But here's the rub. This young girl, Sandra Birchmore, she's 15. She graduates from Stoughton High or whatever, and then she moves to Canton, land of Karen Reed trials, and she commits suicide, or at least that's the official version. That she hung herself by her closet door, and she committed suicide. However, and I want to add this to the stage here. It's like to the those of you guys who are listening, or you won't see it, but if you're listening, here's a picture of this guy entering her apartment Now, keep in mind, this is 2021. If you look at the date of the surveillance camera, it's February 1st, 2021. All right. This is the night she dies, or they don't find her body for a few days. She's a substitute or a assistant teacher at a school in another town.
Sharon.
And in Sharon, okay, which is another abutting town. And so this guy goes in, and then 28 minutes later or 26 minutes later, I forget whether it is, he comes out. There's a picture of him leaving the elevator. All right. And it turns out this is Matthew Farwell, the same guy who had an inappropriate relationship with her while she was a high school student. And there's no surveillance of her leaving her apartment after he leaves.
I think we need to stop and just highlight the point that during this time, Sandra Birchmore was pregnant and was telling and believed or telling Matthew Farwell that he was the father. So during this time, and it was the next day that Matthew Farwell's wife gave birth. So at this point, Matthew Farwell's wife was in the hospital about to deliver another baby, and he has to pay Sandra Birchmore a visit.
And you know, one of the things I looked up is suicide rates. First of all, it's fairly rare for women to commit suicide. Most suicides are by men. And the interesting thing is pregnant women are less than half as likely as other non-pregnant women their age to commit suicide. So it's pretty rare. Right there, that ought to send off some alarm. I mean, and you know, it's interesting. I chat GTP'd this, and they said, well, the ones who do commit suicide, usually it's because of abuse of a spouse or loved one, or I forget what it was. Like it was, or a couple of things that didn't really relate to this. And I thought, interesting. But it seems to me that he ought to be a leading suspect, at least a leading suspect for her murder. Now, you had pointed out a couple other irregularities about the suicide too. You know, you pointed out that there's earlier surveillance here. I'm going to take this down. There's earlier surveillance of her doing laundry. She doesn't look distraught or anything. She just looks like, it's matter of fact. I watched. She was
by all accounts, very excited to be having a baby. Like she wanted this baby. But
I mean, you could see her going up and down, and you know, up and down the, carrying the laundry basket or whatever. I mean, she didn't look excited to me. She looked just, hey, I'm just doing
going about her business.
Regular, you know, it's Wednesday or whatever day it was, you know, and that was the vibe I got from
absolutely
from what she'd done. And by the way, it turned out that I guess they must have done some sort of a DNA test. Turns out she was pregnant and it wasn't his baby. All right, so I don't, you know, whether it was another cop's baby or, you know, one of the other ones involved,
several officers
or if it was someone unrelated, we don't know. But the fact is, she's dead. He was the last one to see her, and there's very few questions being asked here about why that is. And you mentioned also the method of, you know, asphyxiation. You know, she hung herself.
The hyoid bone.
Yeah, I mean, could you explain a little bit about that? Because that's something that I haven't looked into, and I'd like to hear a little more about that. Okay,
so I'm not a doctor and I have no medical expertise, but during the autopsy, her hyoid bone was broken, which is a bone in your throat here that in what's notable about the hyoid bone is it's not typically a bone that would break during a hanging or by suicide, or suicide by hanging, excuse me. But it is a bone that is typically broken during strangulation. So that right there is very significant. Even her cousin John knew that. He's like, oh, the hyoid bone. So it's something that's very, very well known that is just something that is not associated with suicide, but is associated with a forceful strangulation. And so there's obviously there was.
I was just about to say, I'm just about to crack wise about. Gee, Epstein's hyoid bone was broken too. I don't know. I don't know if it was, but in his jail cell. I mean, they did mention that he had a couple of bones broken and that it's unusual in asphyxiation. I mean, there are cases where that happens, but usually there's a dead drop as opposed to just a regular strangulation.
Hanging from a doorknob, a closet doorknob. That's where she was found, and that alone makes it much more rare. Instinct usually kicks in.
I don't know. I know. I looked at this place and I thought to myself, I don't even know how that works. I mean, all right, those doors look like they're metal, but I wonder if they're the cheap, like the closet doors are going to be the doors here. I mean, you can see on the.
This is him walking into the building.
He's walking into the building, okay? And there's an elevator, and there's two other doors, and they look like they're metal doors. They look like they're pretty strong doors. But this doesn't look like, I'm looking at the flooring, and it's pretty cheap. And all I can think of is they're not going to have metal doors or expensive, tough doors on a closet in an apartment like that. I mean, she wasn't made of money. This is not a luxury apartment. It's so much more. If you go into the text messages, she describes to her friend how he was examining the closet doors, and she couldn't figure out why he was acting real strange. Like, why would he, what was he looking for in her closet? It was very, very specific. And then she was found hanging from her closet door. But according to our district attorney, that day or
absolutely nothing.
That day?
It was in the very shortly preceding, because do you know how during domestic abuse issues, a lot of times there's abuse, and then there's a period where the perpetrator will act nice, will all of a sudden soften their tone because they know what they're going to do or what they need to get. And so this is what apparently happened in the Sandra Birchmore case. She had a very hard time. She was, being abused. She had previously expressed to her friends how she felt threatened, like she felt scared at him. Sometimes he would choke her and become abusive. And then, but in her mind, when you're abused as a young child, you're sort of stuck in that, emotional mentality, where, because I just wanted to add to, he exploited her vulnerabilities, because as a lot of times abusers do, because Sandra Birchmore didn't have, had a really hard upbringing. She experienced a lot of loss, and didn't have, the people looking out for her the way a lot of people do. She lost her mother at a young age, and then her grandmother started watching her and took custody, and then her grandmother died. And so she didn't have that home, that safety net or foundation that she needed. And so, fast forward, a perpetrator, a pedophile like Matthew Farwell totally exploits that.
The typical pedophile will look for those vulnerable people, and it doesn't matter whether it's a police officer in a school or a teacher or a priest or a scoutmaster. They look for the person who has no one basically to tell on them that they trust.
It's a real sad.
Because they're not going to tell us. They look for the vulnerable person with the legitimate sob story, and and so Birchmore was sort of the perfect victim in that case. And of course, she became a victim again when she was murdered. In my opinion, she was murdered. I mean, I wasn't in the apartment, but it really, really, really looks bad. Like he did it. And the interesting thing is, the district attorney in Norfolk County, which covers Stoughton and Canton and Norwood and all of these area towns that we grew up in. It's just south of Boston. He refused to prosecute anything with regard to the Farwell case. He put out a statement 18 months after Birchmore had died, saying, let me quote it here: "The investigation to date has not developed a prosecutable statutory rape case against any individual." And the news story that I quoted that from, it said without a witness testimony. Of course, the witness had died, but they we're past statutory rape. We're at murder here. But they're sticking to the suicide. The district attorney in Massachusetts is sticking to the suicide position, but the FBI, the federal government, is not. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Our district attorney is going against, apparently, the FBI at every turn, I think. I am not of the opinion that the
ordinarily I'd say that's a good thing, but not in this case. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, so he wants us to believe that the FBI has it all wrong, and that he hasn't really made an official statement on this. The only thing we have on record is his political opponent, because it said on live on the Young Jerks live stream that I think it was in June of this year, that he believes that the suicide will still hold up in court. When he was asked about, are you going to press charges, in the Sandra Birchmore case? So he is doubling down, apparently, reportedly, that it's a suicide, which is a preposterous, crazy position to take under the weight of the evidence. It does not make any sense. He thinks the FBI has it wrong in his Keystone Cops with all of that's going on. And he wants us to believe that, his guys got it right. So the Massachusetts State Police officers, they have their office right in the Norfolk County DA's office. And they're on the same floor. So they work hand in hand, side by side. And so the biases and the entanglements are there.
They work together, and that's maybe part of the problem. It's not really a stretch to say the FBI could be wrong. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. I guess it was 25 years ago, but it was, or maybe it was even more than that. When did Whitey Bulger jump ship? It was the 90s, I think. But he was basically running the Boston office of the FBI at the time. And they got, I think, five FBI, I think it was 5 FBI agents on Whitey's payroll. And of course, he had Boston cops, and I think he had one guy in the state police. But that, when that bombshell went off, that I think helped a lot with at least the local FBI. But in this case, you look at the guy he's right there. He's right there in the house. Yeah. And he was clearly, admitting or claiming he had taken her virginity when she was still a minor. Now, on that alone, I think you would at least arraign and try a case. If a guy basically confesses to statutory rape, if a guy is in the building when someone commits suicide, you would at least, you would at least make an attempt to get a case. And the FBI has done that, and the district attorney in Massachusetts has not. Okay, so we've kind of summarized. We're coming up to an hour. Kind of summarize these cases. There's a lot more detail to know in both, especially the Karen Reed case, because there was just a ton of detail, which is surprising for something where there really isn't a lot of. it wasn't like everything was on video camera, although there were some things after the fact that were on the video camera. The death was not recorded on video camera. But there was a lot of details. So you can get sort of lost in the details. And I don't want my viewers to do that. What do we take from this? You look at these two cases. These two cases, I know in your case, really personally animated and activated you into getting involved and taking an interest in these kind of things. How does it change your worldview? Because at the beginning of the show said, gee, the Christopher Tapp case out in Idaho, that really changed my position on not just on the death penalty, but also on how prosecutors can be corrupt and can push to get the wrong guy convicted. I was unaware that could even happen. I thought most of the cases before that were absolutely accidental and incidental, and there was no knowledge of it. But there was an actual animus in there in the Tapp case. How does this affect you?
It's changed my way of viewing a lot of the ideas and concepts, that we were taught in law school, when we had to take the ethics exam, and, the idea that a prosecutor might be corrupted never really crossed my mind, honestly. We've dealt with in law school, even corrupt cops and stuff, but your local prosecutor, that's a very powerful position. And what are the checks and balances when that position or other positions, such as police, are not looking out for you?
Yeah.
There's the leadership in the state.
Yeah. For me, it was the active prosecution of a case against a person that was innocent. And in this case, what we've discussed tonight is really both sides of it, right? We've got one case where the prosecution just was jonesing to get Karen Read, and they didn't care how much money they had to spend, how many times they had to try her. They finally lost. The jury came back not guilty on all charges, except I don't know, maybe she had some minor thing, but they basically let her off. In the other case, the Birchmore case, it's prosecutorial abuse by inaction, by saying, oh, well, these guys, these are policemen, these are agents of the state. They should get a pass. And they're not saying it out loud, but that's the effect of the decision by the district attorney in Norfolk County, that, oh, well, we the cops, they can get a special deal. And you know what? That's probably going to lead to, his name's Michael Morrissey. It's probably going to lead to him getting removed from office at the next election, because district attorneys are elected in Massachusetts. I know I live further south in Bristol County, and in my hometown, Taunton, Massachusetts, about 20 years ago, there was a Taunton police officer who had confessed to a counselor that he had raped his 8-year-old, or maybe it was 9-year-old stepdaughter every night for a year. So there's a duty to report. The psychiatrist reported it, and he was let go, and he was prosecuted. And the district attorney had a deal with him that he could just get probation and time served. He'd spent 8 months in prison awaiting trial, and they cut a special deal to let him keep his pension. There's a morals clause with police officers that if they violate the conscience and their duties as police officers, that they lose their pension. But he kept his pension, and that district attorney was booted out of office the very next election. So I think Michael Morrissey is probably headed down the drain.
I can't imagine he would get reelected. But what's interesting, what would happen though, is what happens when he doesn't get reelected. So there's now you have another district attorney.
And the worry is that you play musical chairs with corrupt leaders, just as
well. There's that worry too, but
yeah, because I mean if the police are saying, oh, you're fired in Stoughton, but you can go to Abington, or you're fired here and you can go to another place, well, that doesn't really help.
It would be tough to fill those shoes of corruption, I think. I mean, I don't understand.
You're talking to a libertarian who thinks, this is what government does. They're corrupt.
Yeah,
but yeah, I know
corrupt,
what you're saying.
But when you're talking about protecting for a pedophile murderer, because I don't understand why he has not charged Matthew Farwell. As a matter of fact, during the hearing, Josh Levy, the U.S. acting attorney at the time, when Matthew Farwell was arrested back in August, he gave a public statement at a press conference, and he very notably said, and I'd just like to finally note that I am sharing the information and the evidence we've gathered in this case with the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office, the Massachusetts State Police, and the Massachusetts Attorney General's Office, so they can assess whether or not state charges are warranted in this case. And that was back in August. It's been a full year. So apparently, our district attorney, Michael Morrissey, still does not believe that Matthew Farwell is guilty or that any charges are warranted in this case, because there has been nothing. There's been crickets. There's been no charge, right. And there's no excuse. He hasn't really made a public statement. It does feel like he's in hiding. During the entire Karen Reed case, he never showed his face. It's very strange. It's big case. You're the boss, and he just hides.
Yeah, that's well. I for one think that the voters should vote him out, and I think that's what's going to happen. And they need to insist on someone who's going to stand up for justice. It's as simple as that.
It's more than that, though. What about the leadership?
Oh, I mean, they've got to continue to go at. They've got to not continue. They've got to start going after the ones who've been covering up and keep firing in a much more blatant sense. The ones who are doing things that are obviously, if not outright corrupt, totally incompetent. Because the Karen Reed case showed me that even if you accept everything that the prosecutor says is 100% true, it means that there was tremendous incompetence by the Canton Police, the Massachusetts State Police, and the District Attorney's Office, who refused to forward a lot of exculpatory information for many months and into the trial. So there is at best massive incompetence.
I think they want us to believe that they're that incompetent.
Oh, I know. I'm putting shine on it, but I think it's worse than that. But anyway, I think we summed it up. I hope that if you're listening in another city or town or state or country, you probably have the same issues with your government. And the cure is to shine a light on it, just like is happened in Massachusetts. We have this indefatigable reporter named Turtle Boy, Aidan Kearney.
Oh, we didn't even touch on it.
No, we didn't. I mean, there's so many details. We're not going to be able to. But he kept pushing, and so much that he ended up spending 60 days in jails for witness intimidation. We could go down that rabbit hole.
Really, it's just his reporting. That's another rabbit hole you should go down.
At some
point.
Especially
as a reporter.
Yes. So shine a light on it and don't back down. Keep going. And maybe you'll root out some corruption. It's the best I can do for advice. Okay. I think we're just about done here. Thank you very much, Deborah. It's weird saying Deborah to my sister, but yeah, thank you very much. And your expertise, of course, you have the knowledge of the law as well. I really appreciate you coming on and being my very first guest.
Thank you.
On my, you're not going to be the last, but you're the very first.
I'm sure.
And yeah, that's what matters. And I think I was interested in reading all this stuff. And of course, I hope we summarized it well for the listeners.
It's hard to summarize. The Turtleboy case is very important as well. Ironically, that
absolutely.
might be the key that exposes a lot more it is. But
most likely, the Birchmore case is so cut and dry. It really is.
Yeah.
Okay, that's it. I will see you next week, 8:30 Wednesday. I'll have another podcast. Thank you, Deborah. And make sure again that you look for my article at the Libertarian Institute the next day. And also, hey, buy me a coffee.